let's talk about like a success story first before we talk about the kind of the platform. So because we were talking about this just this morning. It kind of spawned kind of this idea for doing this one because we had a student recently who went through an interview process from, I think it was it wasn't the last cohort, it was a cohort before, I think, right? So earlier this year.
Early this year.
We just went through the interview process and kind of gave us some feedback. We always like to get feedback from our students, don't we? To be like, hey, so what was he's landed a job, and we're like, so what was your process like?
Right.
And
yeah, check out, like, you can read through his process. You've got his details there.
Yeah. So basically, he, hold on, let me pull it up real quick. I don't have it for the screen, but basically he went through a multi kind of interview process, and they asked him a bunch of topics, MVC, API, SQL, DevOps, and then he had a technical assessment.
Right. Yeah.
He had a technical interview. He actually had a hacker rank assessment too. He had a coding challenge that was reverse a palindrome. Which
we'll get
to in a second.
It's in our course, yeah. Like so. But so what I think what we can bring into what's kind of interesting about all of that is that up until this point, all of that stuff you talked about, he failed. He didn't get a job from.
He didn't get a job with all this stuff, including including the creme de la creme of this, which was hold on, this is very specific. I gotta get this right.
Yeah, I know.
A 98 question HTML5 multiple choice test.
98 questions on HTML. I don't know.
Who puts out a 98 question test? What sick person does that?
Yeah, and why do you give away multiple choice tests about HTML? I don't understand. So like we found one, didn't we?
Yeah, because here's what it ends up looking
like. So let's
like.
take one.
Because here's what it ends up looking like, and it's like, really, this is
so like HTML multiple choice. I think is funny. What does HTML stand for? Now, number one, okay, let's say that you're actually building websites for a living. Yeah. Does this freaking really matter what HTML stands for?
Nah.
You know,
useless. Useless. Absolute useless.
So
I mean, this one may be more useful.
Maybe. But you can hold on. My title goes in my body. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what this website is, by the way. We just found this Java T point. Both C and D are identical, by the way. I just want to point that out.
Right. What is Java point? So, like Java programmers, like that's what it is.
We scrolled through this real quick. Like right before we did this. And we kind of got down to this point here, and it was question 21, which is amazing. And it's, hold on, I'll make this a little bit bigger. It is kind of small. Which of the following HTML tag is used to display the text when scrolling? With scrolling effect. Marquee, scroll div, none of the above. Which should be this, because we joked about question 22 being, forget that you know the answer to question 21.
Exactly. Don't ever use the marquee tag.
Ever use the marquee tag. Actually, that should be question 22, actually, shouldn't it? It should be, should you ever use the answer to question 21? It's like, no, you shouldn't.
I think it's funny. So
that's just crazy.
The scrolling effect. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
But like,
so his success story though came out of his next interview, where, and I kind of will quote here. It says, "The job I got was actually because he looked through my portfolio, already saw my capabilities, and asked additional questions about my work."
Exactly.
That's the job he got.
Boom.
Once doing all these other stuff, he didn't get.
Right. Okay. So in other words, in the coder-friendly realm, he demoed the bug tracker.
Yes.
He showed his portfolio and he demoed it. And so like this ultimately, what I want to give you hope for is you follow our process. Okay, let's say you did interview 5 times like this guy did. And but it's going to be more successful. We're going to give you more successes than trying to answer 98 HTML questions, which are like, we can go to W3 schools and just have it on our screen while we code and figure that stuff out.
It's useless knowledge. I mean,
it's
knowledge
silly.
that you will pick up over time for sure. And we look through them and like, oh, these are actually very, very simple, but that's not the point. The point is, it's just he's filling up your mind with useless junk. If you need to figure out like which tag to use in a certain situation, you'll just, like you said, you'll Google it, look up W3 school.
Google it.
Like, it doesn't matter.
And so the other thing too is, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit too, in his interview process, he had to do a palindrome exercise, which is reverse a string and then check to see if the reverse string matches the first string that was inputted. So we do that in our course. And when you look through our course, we have a section in the portfolio called coding challenges. And these coding challenges are interview type questions that we just put a UI on. So if before we even get into like interview techniques, just knowing going through HackerRank or LeetCode or whatever like that is of value, especially if you put a UI on it and make it an application while you solve it. So that's good practice, but I wouldn't just practice just to memorize them. I would practice and turn them into apps and put them in a coding challenge section on your website. Because if someone says, hey, can you make a palindrome, check a palindrome? You're like, yeah, I can. Let me show you this app I wrote about it. That's how I would answer that question. So,
right.
Like, I mean, like,
which we'll
and
get
then
to
show
in a
them
second.
Taco Cat, which is what we call it here. That's our internal name of it because Taco Cat's a palindrome. Everyone has to build it because we want people to show, like, I do coding challenges for breakfast, I mean, so I think that's one other, in lieu of the interview question stuff, I think that's another secret sauce to our portfolios.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So look at what Ram's saying here. Yes, you can build real websites, but we don't hire you because you don't remember the long form of HTML. Yeah. I mean, it's that. That's it. I
mean, those 40 questions that were so bad. The first one should have been is HTML. Is HTML language?
Yeah, exactly. HTML programming language. Yeah. Just throw debate in straight away.
Yeah, exactly. Here at Company ABC, we really like the blink tag. What do you think about that? So
yeah. Well, here's the other thing too. Here's the other thing that Jen's kind of points out with this comment right here. So try some of the LinkedIn quizzes. Some of the questions are crazy tricky, and they only give you 90 seconds to Google the right answer. See, that's the other thing too. That's okay. So to make a multiple choice question actually kind of worth something, you kind of have to make it tricky, and that makes it useless.
Especially when things like HTML or JavaScript,
anything that's easily referenceable.
Yeah, so like I've seen JavaScript questions come back of the 4 lines of code, which one compiles?
Yeah, and then it's right. Okay. It's tricky because there's like they've put an extra semicolon in there or something that'll make it fail. Yeah. And it's like, oh, come on, what's the point in that?
Option E should be, that's what VS Code is for. I mean, like, that's what it should say. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. I'm not a compiler, man. I mean, like, let me look through this thing. You know?
Silly.
And it's
silly
always kind of arcane syntax things that clearly you would solve that if you were presented with it in an IDE situation.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about interview technique then. Let's talk about firstly, let's talk about some of the prerequisites. So there's a bunch of prerequisite stuff for this.
Right. So this is a post learning to code technique.
Yes. It's nothing to do with the learning to code. It's kind of like, to use this technique, we assume that you know how to code. You can't trick your way into a job using this technique because you'll fail at the very, very first hurdle.
Yeah, and you can't fake it till you make it. You got to learn how to code at some point. So we're also assuming that you went to university, bootcamp, community college, and that you have built a portfolio with some projects on it.
Or you can be self-taught, and
you can be self-taught.
You've got to have built some stuff.
Udemy, but you've built some projects that you can talk about, and you have a portfolio that you can show. So if you don't have that, this isn't going to work for you because we rely on those to win roles.
Yep, definitely. And actually, just to hit on the you must know how to code thing again first. Yeah. So this isn't, back to your comment from before, this isn't a get rich quick scheme.
No.
There's actual work involved, and there's work involved in this entire thing we're going to lay out here. This isn't just like it's not a trick, it's not a magic trick. Right? It's not like you're not going to fool somebody into giving you the job. That's not what this is. Some people think that's the best way to try and pursue this.
And a lot of people think that I'm trying to trick people when I show them what I do.
Right.
Like
and that's not what this is.
I've been accused of, like, you can't use Jedi mind tricks. That wouldn't work on me. I'm a hiring manager. I'm like, it's not a Jedi mind trick, man. And like, it's like, it's based in sales and based in,
I think at the end of the day, exactly, it all boils down to the person hiring you needs to hire somebody who can code, right? Somebody who can be a developer. So then it's on you to convince them that you can be that developer. That's it. That's all it is.
And so the other thing that I want to caution people on is I look around on tech Twitter and LinkedIn. I've seen a lot more on LinkedIn recently, where candidates will post something on LinkedIn and say, I'm taking a stand against coding tests.
Seen this.
And I will no longer accept offers that involve me taking a coding test. And then I see other candidates say, my resume speaks for itself. I'm not going to answer any interview questions. I'm like, dude, you're not going to get a job. So like you have to, like we can influence the hiring industry, which we try to. I talk to a lot of employers, and when they're hiring them, and I always tell them, like, this is how you should interview candidates. Now, do they listen to me? Not all the time, but does that make them a bad person? No, it just means that they have their process. So a lot of this revolves around what the current process is, which is come in for an interview either via Zoom or sit down at a desk or come in the room and answer 50 code trivia questions and maybe a whiteboard test and maybe a take-home test. And so the other thing I see on tech Twitter and in LinkedIn is like, they gave me a coding test. That's going to take me 4 hours. I'm not going to spend 4 hours getting a job. And I don't know I have an offer yet. I'm not going to get an offer. So I'm not spending any time on that. I'm like, dude, it took you a half a day, man. I'm binge watching the British Baking Show. I mean, like, I've got 4 hours to crank out a coding test. And what you can do is crank that coding test out and stick it on your portfolio after you build it.
Yep. And I think
that's what I would do.
I mean, takeaway here is it's not easy. It is hard work, and it's not magic.
Yeah. Right.
That's kind of the takeaway here.
If you're 15 years into this, 20 years into this, and you've worked at American Airlines or Microsoft, or you've built up a rep in the industry, you're probably not going to get a coding test anyway. But if you do, you can push back. Guess why? You're in such high demand, it doesn't matter. You can be very choosy and picky. Yep. The thing that I see is people with either no coding job or they're 1 to 2 years in the industry and the options just aren't quite there. And they're listening to this industry person that can like get a job at the drop of a hat, and they can be picky and they can't choose. So they say, I'm going to do what Scott Hanselman does when he interviews for new roles. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything. You're like, well, no, that's different. I mean, so there's some guys that never have to interview, but like for most of us, we got to prove that we can do it. And so that's just part of the game. And our interview technique is around this game of interview and how do we maximize it and put it in our best interest so that we can win more than we lose.
There you go.
We're not going to win them all, but I promise you, if you do what we say at 5 consecutive interviews, I bet you'll get hired. I've yet to see someone truly follow this and not be able to land a role. They land a role every single time they listen to us. Not every interview, but they eventually get a role.
Okay, so here's some of the prerequisite things then too.
Yeah.
If you're going to a physical interview, which hopefully is more and more coming back, hopefully.
Yeah.
Then you need to take your laptop, and not only do you need to take your laptop's got to be ready to roll to give a demo.
Yeah.
Turned on, logged in, ready to roll.
So if you're rocking like a 1994 laptop that takes a minute to get going, turn it on in the parking lot before you get in there. Make sure that thing is booted up and ready to go. The worst thing in the world during a demo is it's hold on a second, and like for 4 minutes, your computer sit there and churns.
Even 30 seconds is going to feel really long on both sides of this. They're going to see you negatively, and on your side, you're going to be sweating for 30 seconds.
Yeah, right. So that's why we recommend that you publish your code on somewhere, especially if you're just going to demo the app so that you can get the performance you want out of the app and it's not necessarily running locally. But if you got great hardware coming in, or adequate hardware, it's okay either way, but make sure that your demo can be brought up fast and it's snappy when it's there. Yep. So my advice is, and I tell this to every Code4Foundry grad, let's say that we've pushed our code to Heroku and we're using that free tier. And if you've ever been to a Heroku free tier site, you click on it, and it's got to like spin up the component, and it takes a minute for it to get going. So you can do that process in the parking lot before you look at it, and then it's all kind of ready to go.
Yep.
And it's not good enough to say, this is on the free tier, that's why it's slow. That's not good enough.
Yeah. It just sounds like an excuse.
Yeah, it does.
Valid or not, doesn't matter. It just comes across that way. Okay,
or if you're interviewing, pay for a faster tier just for a month or something like that. If you truly have a real problem.
Exactly. Invest in it a little
Invest
bit.
in yourself.
Yep. Okay, another prerequisite for this to work. It is much easier if your stack aligns with the stack on the job.
Yes. Makes it a
It's
whole
not
lot
impossible
easier.
if it doesn't, but it makes it way easier if it does.
Way easier. So what we're doing is we're aligning what they're really looking for with what you do. And if you match those two together, it makes a lot of sense. This is why we say when you're in the book, the coding book that we have, you can put it up there.
I have a copy.
Shameless plug. Breaking the code. This is one of the 5 steps, which is like, hey, you know what? It matters what you learn. Internally, we call it the stack matters. I mean, we have like logos and stuff around the building here, stack matters. That it matters what you learn, because if I can align that with the hiring process, I have a much better chance than someone that says, oh, I know React, I'm interviewing for a .NET job, therefore I can learn .NET, versus the other guy that says, oh, I coded in .NET and now I'm interviewing for a .NET role. And the reverse is too. I built .NET, now I'm going to go interview for React roles. They're not as likely to hire you as they would someone coming in with experience. So align your stack with your role. That means when you pick your boot camp, you pick your college, and you learn stuff, you have to know what you're learning, and just to see if that's worth knowing.
You have
in the
to
industry,
have done your research. Yep.
Yeah. Does a stack I align with industry? Are people hiring for those roles?
Yeah.
And so that means that if they're teaching Dino, that's going to be hard right now, currently, because there's less and less. There's not as many Dino roles out there.
We've said this a million times. If you jumped on tech Twitter like 6 months ago and decided to learn what was hot right now, you'd have learned Dino. Because it was all the rage, and it's like that was a bad way to decide what to learn.
I think when Dino was announced, and in the first 5 days of Dino being announced, like they announced it, there was probably 1,000 tweets about, tell me your favorite JS framework and why is it Dino tweets. It's just like it was going to take over the planet, you know? And it's like, it's not, people. I mean, there's too many projects out there that are already written in something else. They just don't lightly, oh, Dino's out, let's just rewrite our whole stack. You know, let's just go that. And maybe new work gets there, but it didn't look that way, because then the other people that are doing current work are like, I'm not learning a new thing. I'm just going to use what I got. So it's just kind of switching over to a new framework is more difficult than people think. And I think it's a very naive. Yes. So tech influencers sometimes don't really work in the industry. You got to realize that too. They're out there just to show you the hottest thing and tell you why you can make it and that kind of stuff. Whereas at Foundry here, we actually write code. We push stuff out in the industry. Like, we make things. Right. We also teach. We're both. And so I feel like what we're telling you is like, when people are interviewing, we know exactly what they're looking for. And we know these techniques work. So, all right.
Okay.
Cool. What's our other prerequisite?
Okay. Next prerequisite is that you have researched the top coding questions in your stack, and you can then also relate those sort of academia type questions to a piece of code that you have written. So, so guess what? It's a massive amount of work. As I said before, this is not not magic. You got to know these things.
Yeah. So for us, it is the top 30 C# questions that we might see in interviews. And so we go down the list with our students. We actually provide 80. We cover the top 30. And so what we do is show them where the answer is in the projects we've built. And then at Foundry, we are building out features specifically to answer questions. And so for example, a very common thing in MVC is, how does routing work? And how do routes get made? Well, not only in the blog project we write do we have to implement routing. Routing is just how does it find new views. Nothing magical about how it works inside of MVC. But if you go to other stacks, the reason I ask the question is because in other stacks, you've got to construct that part. You got to make that part. In MVC and ASP.NET, it comes kind of built in with some basic routes already. But What we do is we show them how to override routes and show them where the routes are overridden at. And that's how we answer the question. And then we expose that and say, okay, in my blog, one of the problems I solved was the route. I didn't want a route that says, like /bog/ index /39. I wanted to give that a real name. And so so what I wanted to do is override the route so they could use the blog title instead of
it's like vanity
the ID
routing,
of the blog
right?
article, a vanity routing. And we call it slug internally. But, that's kind of, but that answers the question, what is MVC routing?
Right.
And so we'll get into that in a second and like more of the.
I'll show you how to use that technique, but that's one thing you kind of have to be prepared for. That is a prerequisite
so answer
for
the
this thing
30
to work.
questions and know how to do that. I would advise you to blog on the top 30 C# questions. That's what we try to tell students. Write a little blog article about each and every one of them, so you can keep your answer right in your blog and refer to it.
There you go.
So
there you go. Kind of our last prerequisite, not really a prerequisite, just a thing. This doesn't work everywhere. In terms of if you go to Facebook, Apple, Google, generally one of the FAANG companies, we all know they have their check sheet that they're going to go down. They have their process of giving you 7 interviews, and you're not going to be able to change that process.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact,
we have a really large company here that's famous around. I'm not going to call out their process because I still want to place students there. But one of the things they do for every role is, and especially for technical people, they have to put together a PowerPoint slideshow and present to marketing why I want to work here. And it's just like, it blows my mind. Like, you're hiring someone to write code, but you want them to put together PowerPoint slides, and present to marketing on top of that. So it's like, wow, okay. They have no idea what I'm going to be doing when I get there.
Right.
But I've got to sell them on why I'm a good fit. It seems weird that's why I'm a good, and then you got to make a PowerPoint slides on top of that. But if you want to work there, guess what? That's the game.
You got to do it. Yep. You got to play the game.
So we have templates that I've given to guys. So it's like, fill these slides out. You put your stuff in them and then present this. And so the art's done. It's ready to roll, and that kind of stuff.
Yep. Okay. So let's get to our actual.
So it may not work for everyone, but this will work for the majority of roles that we're interviewing for.
So let's get to our actual technique then. Step 1 of this technique we call opening.
Yeah. So let's say that I walk into an interview either in person or, even in today's world, it's even stronger on Zoom because you really can't stop it. Right. So in your opening, you basically shake their hand and thank them for giving you time to interview. But then you say, I've got some projects. And then you say, why don't we take a look at my project work? I know you got a lot of questions, so you're respectful of their process. But then you say, but I've got a lot of projects I can show. I think this would really demonstrate my ability to match the requirements that you're looking for. And it really shows what I can really do here and how I can add value to the company. Why don't we take a look at my projects before we get started to see what you think? And that's my opening. And so right away, I'm asking to demo my stuff. Now, what we say to every Coder Foundry student, the quicker you demo your stuff, the more likely and the quicker you're going to get a job. Yep. If you demo the projects we build 5 times, eventually you're going to get hired. Yep. I just think, And we saw that with that guy. He went through the process. He got into code trivia. He got a 98 question HTML exam, and maybe he didn't get that role. So maybe he missed what the marquee tag was. We don't know what, because we don't teach that here at Coder Foundry. He's like, I don't know what the scroll tag is. Who uses that? Or they asked him, something crazy like, what's the aside tag do? And you don't use that every day. And so those kind of nonsensical tests can rule you out. Or if you just showed them a website you build, which has a lot of, shows that you know how to construct an HTML document. How many times do you remember, the actual order of HTML tags? And I would ask, I know that, but that's because I teach it, though. But most guys are like, nah, I've used templates for the last 5 years, or I'm using a snippet to generate them. So I know there's an HTML tag. I know there's a head tag. I know there's a body tag. It's in some order. It doesn't really matter to me because I generate it. You know, I could see a guy who's extremely talented getting the order wrong on that.
Yeah.
You know, because they don't
care. Because something they never pay attention to. It's one of those
they don't care
second
anymore.
nature things they just
that was
don't.
A long time ago,
works.
man. You know,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and so, you know, those are kind of things that you miss out. And so if you allow people to code to tech trivia you, and you answer a question wrong that they think you should know, they'll rule you out. And what you want to do is rule yourself in by showing them work first. And that's what the opening's for, is to see if we could turn this interview into a demo. Yep. Just remember, you're selling yourself into the company. You're selling your ability to code to these two companies and people. And if you're a freelancer, you're going to have to demo. So you might as well demo if you're going to a W-2 job. There's no difference between the two roles. You're just paying you different. So think of it like that. I'm selling myself into the company. And anytime somebody sells something, whether it's a car or a house or whatever, they tend to go look at it. Very rarely, if you're buying a house, do they go, it's got 4 bedrooms and what's the bathroom like? Well, it's sort of like this, you know.
Although in this housing market, it's kind of like sometimes you have to do this. Like, I just want to buy it quick.
Exactly, you know.
Oh, it's got a roof. So, cool, I'm in.
So typically you go see it and you go walk around and you feel it and then you buy it. You know, that's typically how things work. And so think of your demo as showing you what you can do, your true abilities, which is given time, given my proper tooling and all that kind of stuff, I can generate work like this.
Yep.
But do I have the HTML spec memorized? No.
Right.
I don't. I mean, and there may be a random C# question. Yeah.
Here's a real live person that is not a plant.
Okay. D-line.
A real live person who this work for. So I wouldn't have gotten such one in the interview that I didn't without a portfolio. I was asked to explain what projects I made, why I made them. Never had to do any technical questions because of this. Got an offer the next day.
Boom. People, listen to me when I'm saying this. Don't listen to that I need to just study algorithms and I'll get a job with just algo training. It can work for some companies, but don't let LeetCode, because they designed that after the Amazon or the Apple hiring process, to think that every job is going to be like that. You know, have a portfolio, have it built out. Ask them to demo. Now, what do we do, Kevin, if they say no? I mean, like, no.
Because that's what's going to happen, right? They're going to say one or two things.
Man.
And firstly, I would just say, have the guts to ask the question to start off with.
Yes. Be brave.
Be brave. People, we hear this all the time. You come back, somebody will come back from an interview and be like, so you should give them a demo? Like, no. Because you didn't even ask, did you? And they're like,
and they didn't ask you. But here's the secret is they don't think you have one. Most coders at any level rarely walk in with a portfolio. I don't know why it's not required. If you were a designer, it would be required. It would be weird if you were a designer and you didn't have showed a logo or something like that.
Trust me, I can do a logo.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah, I can do one. Really? Have you ever made one? Sure.
Yeah, loads.
Loads.
I'll
I know all about layers in Photoshop. So like, or Illustrator. I know about layers in Illustrator. So. But I think what you need to do is, if they ask you no, keep your laptop on, because guess what we're going to do? We are going to demo this by the end of this interview. That's what we're going to do. Yep. That's our whole goal. Yep. That's your agenda coming in, is to demo. And realize, like, if I don't demo, I'm probably not going to get it anyway. So I might as well put my best foot forward and try to win.
Yep.
Be brave.
Yep.
Be brave. Just be brave.
So if you get a no, this is what we call the redirect, and this comes back to learning your 30 to 50 questions. Right. This is where this technique comes in.
Yeah. And so here's the thing, here's the little known secret about those interview questions is typically they're going to go from super easy down to a lot more hard and more obscure.
You're right. The first question they throw at you isn't going to be some crazy thing that only 3 people in the world know.
No, they're not going to ask you about that. They're not going to. They're not even going to ask you like what I would call standard questions, but tougher ones like, tell me the difference between sealed and protected classes. So you can avoid those things by just being able to redirect on the first one.
Yep.
And so like we had a student interview last week, and I got the feedback was, and I had to go back and coach them on this stuff, but they hadn't done their homework on their 30 top end questions, because you know what the first question was?
What is MVC?
What is MVC?
Right? I knew it. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's like for me as an educator,
that's like
and
softball stuff. That should be a home run
like,
every time.
You know, you're just like going like this, like, come on, dude. Like, how many times I gotta say that? So do your homework.
You get asked that question in an interview, you should literally, your eyes should go wide, and you should have that eureka moment that is just like, I'm gonna get this job.
I mean, this is literally the natural. I'm about to hit this out of the park and knock the lights out. That's exactly what I'm going to do right now. Yep. I'm going to show you. Not only am I going to tell you what MVC is, I'm going to show you. And so that's how I would almost answer this question in that way. Now, that sounds very forward and very aggressive, and you may not be wired that way. But what I would say is MVC is an architectural design pattern. It stands for Model View Controller. And this is what I always use. But you know that. Everyone knows that. But let me show you how I used it on this project, and bam, demo a page with MVC in it.
Which, if you're in a physical location, you have your laptop ready to roll, bam, you're demoing. They're not, the chances of them saying, please don't do that, is kind of slim.
Exactly.
And if you're on Zoom, you're already screen sharing.
You're sharing that baby, man. It's like, we're looking at code right now. Like, and so the problem is a lot of people think this is rude. But really what we're doing is just answering the question that they asked us. It's not rude. Demo the answer. It also gives you the advantage of taking it from a closed book test where you got to remember everything, and you're nervous, you're sweating bullets. This has to work. You need a job, and all those emotions come in. And a lot of times dudes can blank. I can tell you, man, I've had guys from Cortex get asked very things during an interview for a consulting job, and they blanked. One guy blanked on boxing and unboxing. I'll never forget. Like, and he just tells me, he says, I just couldn't. I don't know why I couldn't remember it. Right. But he's the guy that went into the same company, like a year later, re-interviewed, got it, and fixed the 45-day report to run in 4 minutes in the first week he was there. But they had a different interview process, and I tell that story in the book where we just said, instead of demoing, I was telling him at that time, it's like, hey man, show your stuff, tell them about the stuff you built, avoid all these stupid questions, and just tell them about the things you've built, you've fixed, and you've done this 1,000 times, and you're the smartest guy in the room. But just tell them about the things you built and talk about those things. And so we talk about our code, and that's the big thing about this. So if you want to do MVC, say, what is MVC? And you can say Model View Controller, demo a page, and then walk them through a controller, a model, and a view. The whole round trip process and how it works and how this page got rendered. And then that's how you answer it. And that could be any first level React question or any first level JavaScript question, show them code. No, it doesn't matter what they ask. You want to redirect to a piece of code that you have, projects. This is why aligning your stack with the interview is so important, because now they're looking at stuff they do every day.
Yep.
I think
and you're now at this point, you're now in basically the third step. So you've either got to the third step one of two ways. Either you've just jumped into the interview and you've said, hey, you want to look at my portfolio? And they've said yes, and you started looking at some projects.
And you get a job after that, as D-Line says.
Exactly. Or they've said, nah, I've got to ask you some questions. And the first question they pitch at you is, what is MVC? And then bam, you've taken that question, and guess what? Now you're showing them code again. And you're still you're still demoing the project. Either way, you're demoing the project.
So here's my secret to the redirect that we do in the class. And I get this back in my LinkedIn's all the time, on Twitter, and also in team when students do this, is remember this keyword is for example. So when I talk about MVC, I'll say Model View Controller is an architectural design pattern, for example. And what we use that for example is a memory trigger so that you can remember the code that's associated with the question. And it works, man, like it works. And if you practice that, for example, with, it could be your significant other, wife, spouse, best friend, or whatever. If you practice this redirect, even if they don't know the answer, all you're doing is training your brain to recall what that redirect and where I'm going.
Exactly.
So I think it works.
And here's the thing, having this part down as well in terms of knowing these questions, and knowing where you're going to redirect to, you're going to feel super, super confident going into this.
Yeah.
Because chances are they're going to ask you one of these, right?
100%. If you get the top 10 down, I guarantee that one of those top 10 questions will be asked being the first question. I would almost guarantee it if you're interviewing for the same stack. Now, if you go in a different stack interview, it becomes more nebulous. We don't know what they could ask.
Right.
Because we're not aligned at that point. And so it becomes, that means you got to get to the portfolio even quicker.
Yep.
Because then you got to convince them that I can jump from this stack to the next one. Let me show you what I built.
And I think what this does too, this overall technique helps you with your confidence too.
Yes.
We know going for an interview isn't easy. It's not. You're going to be prepared. If you just go in and wing it, you're just going to sweat. And it's like, for some people, yeah, they can do it. I get it. For most of us, prep is going to make it a million times easier of a process. And you're going to come across better.
I will tell you this, what I have noticed, and this is another reason we instill this in the students here at Coder Foundry, is like the people that wing it, if you really watch what they do this instinctively.
Right.
They always answer a question in the concrete. They never go to the academic answer, what is MVC? And they're like stumbling around for words. They'll immediately go, oh yeah, I've written 4 projects in that. And on this one project, I did this in MVC and it was really cool. And then they just get excited about what they're talking about. Yeah. And those people do that instinctively. And that's why they win technical interviews. Even coming out of the boot camp, what I have seen is guys that are like in the middle that don't know the terms a lot of times. All they know is the concrete. And that's when they answer the question, they just leap over the architecture design pattern part and just go, well, I made a page using it. Like, let me show you that page. And they just, and it's almost better not to know all of this stuff if you can just get to the concrete. I mean, so make sure that you're going from abstract academic answer to concrete as fast as you can in demo. So I think that's good. So,
and here's what happens next then. So kind of, we don't have this as a step, but let's say that you get that MVC question and you show that MVC stuff. Now you're demoing your own project, right? Chances are the next question isn't even from their list, right? It's about something they've just It's about something they've just seen in your app. They're going to say, "Oh, what's that line there do? What are you doing? Right. Why'd you do it that way?"
So here's the other thing about prep that I also tell the students all the time is like, when you show something, know whatever you're showing backwards and forwards. So we only show parts. We only demo parts that we want the interviewer to see. Don't bring up a random page you haven't looked at in 6 months.
Or something you're just working on this morning that doesn't work yet.
Yeah, exactly. Just bring up the one page that is well-worn and be very methodical about what you're doing. I call it a script. You should make a demo script of what's going to happen in the interview. And then when you get that question, this is the script I'm going to. What I would say is bring a notebook and have your script written down. If you can't remember the script, it's okay. Flip over there, man, and have that plan right here in one of these notebooks that you just kind of go, you just open it up like you're going to take notes, but it's got your demo script in there as well. And that's okay.
Yep.
You know, that's just fine.
Yep, definitely.
Cool.
So there you go. So that's our overall kind of technique. We have some other things to talk about, but that's our open redirect show kind of technique.
Yeah.
We have one kind of bonus tip.
Okay.
Which I think is cool. And this was asking the interviewer questions and asking the interviewer the correct kind of questions.
Right.
So I have questions and bad questions.
Yeah, I've been there, and sometimes I'm privileged to sit in on interviews because, like, what I tell the employer is I want to look at both sides of this, and I'm trying to get people jobs, but at the same time, I'm not trying to sell you a bill of goods either. If the candidate's bad, the candidate's bad. There's nothing we can do. And they're adults and they're going to make it. So I'm not trying to like game their process. I just want to know how the process works and kind of what they're looking for. I have seen students ask about cringy type things in the last month. And I've had seniors people that are interviewing for jobs ask cringe-worthy questions. And guess what? They don't get a job. Number one, know your audience. So when you ask a question, you got to know who you're interviewing with and whether they even have the required information to answer it. So here's a super cringy question that's very popular on tech, and the tech Twitter will say, ask them about senior leadership and what the turnover rate is in senior leadership.
Right.
Why does that matter? Like, it's like, you're like, are you going to take the job if they offer it to you? Yeah. Okay. Do you care if like the the CTO, they were on their third CTO in the last 3 months.
I put that in the category of a skeptical question.
Yeah.
I call those skeptical sounding questions versus a positive sounding question.
Right. And so, in other words, like, and you were interviewing with the dev manager may not know. He's like, I don't know. I'm hoping the other guy quits so I can take his job. But like, right. I don't know. I mean, like, he doesn't know the answer. The second thing is like, things about work culture are crazy bad questions to ask, because what answer do you expect to get? So it's like, what's work-life balance here? And the guy's going to tell you it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what he's going to tell you. He's not going to tell you, I put in 90 hours last week, Kevin. And,
exactly.
we don't have bathrooms in the building. We have to pee in the back. We have to go outside and use the tree in the back. And it's terrible. I hate being here. In fact, I'm leaving next week as soon as I hire you.
All that question does is put a kind of mark on you, doesn't it? It just puts this weird, it makes them think about, why are you asking that question? Of course, everybody cares about that stuff. We get it.
Yeah.
Why do you particularly need to know the answer to that question right now? It immediately puts is this guy looking to slack off? Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the impression that it gets. That's the impression that it makes of you. And that's not the impression you want to leave.
Yeah, and so I literally asked, it was just, I've seen some very skeptical things people have asked.
Those things about, work-life balance and like HR type questions, period, are kind of like
type things.
When you're in that technical interview, let your recruiter deal with that, or deal with that once you get an offer. Like
once you get an offer,
paid time
ask
off.
Those questions.
Yeah, don't be like, do we get like a MLK day off every year? Like, don't ask the guy.
Yeah, because I'm big into MLK.
He doesn't know,
and which is okay. You can take a personal day. You can do whatever. Yeah,
firstly, he doesn't know, so he doesn't care, and he's just going to be like, "Why are you even asking that?" I get it's important or whatever it is, but it's not important to him, and it's not important to you being a developer for the job.
And he's just trying to tech you out to see if you can code or not, And so you want the and I've seen guys ask for the published vacation schedule, the benefits package, all that stuff before they've been teched out, before we got an offer. And so what you do is when you get an offer, then you ask all those things and you can turn it down or take it or whatever you want. So and some of these questions don't matter at all. What are they going to tell you? They're either going to tell you the truth or they're going to lie to you. It doesn't really matter. That question is always going to come back positive. It is what it is. Like work-life balance, love it. It's awesome.
Make sure that you I think the takeaway from this is make sure that you can land the job before you kind of mark yourself as a reason for them to not give you the job. You don't want to give them any reason to not get a job offer. Right. Take the offer, then you can weigh it, and guess what? You don't have to take it. If for some reason there's a really thing, you don't have to take it, but at least get to the point where you get an offer. Don't shoot yourself in the foot before you've even got to that point in the process.
Yeah. Right. So on tech Twitter now and on LinkedIn, I see people saying, I'm not going to interview for any roles that give me a coding test. And it's just like you're just putting up barriers before someone can even hire you.
Yep.
And so what we want to tell you to do is encourage you to go through the process as it is today. It's not perfect. No, it's never going to be perfect. And then don't ask questions that rule you out at the very end of the interview. Here's the question you should ask. What are you working on?
Yeah.
What are you working on right now?
Exactly. Shows enthusiasm. It's a positive question. And it's going to get them talking about work stuff that you can
and that's
show
what you want them to talk about. And then say and then go, wow, that's amazing. I can't wait to work on that. I would love to participate in that project. That sounds amazing to me. And so I think that's what you do is you always trying to facilitate an interview. And our second bonus tip goes back to this is every tech interview question you get, write it down. Okay. So let's say they ask you a tech interview question that you completely blank on. Write it down, answer it within 24 hours and send it back to them and say, hey, I was just nervous and here's my write-up on that question. I should have known the answer, but I didn't. So, per the reflection, here's what I do. And then maybe even show them a demo of something that answers that question. The other thing is if you get a tech coding challenge, a whiteboard challenge, like reverse a palindrome, reverse a string palindrome, whatever it is, and you can't do it right then and there, write an app and send it back to them within 24 hours. I've seen a lot of dudes do that and turn the interview from a no to a yes. And then my final thing is, and we'll get to questions here, I'm sure we have a bunch, is if you go through a bad interview process, okay, that you deem bad, you deem it's unfair, and the hiring manager treated you badly.
Right.
It doesn't really matter. Don't go on Twitter and blast them over their hiring process. I see that all the time. Like, companies are awful. They know who you're talking about. Like, and so therefore what that does is it signals that you're hard to get along with.
Yeah. You've
because
burned not only the bridge with that company, but potentially with
a lot of others.
With other companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the soft no that can kind of happen because you're just overly negative on social media and you overshare. You're like, they had the nerve to ask me this coding question, and of course I can't do that. I need a compiler. It just means that it shows that you failed at something and you're just salty about it. And better, just stay silent, take the question, send it back to them in 24 hours as a complete, add it to your portfolio, and move on, and then do better on the next one. Yep. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, let's do this question real
got
quick.
Any questions?
I got some others, but yeah, we'll do this one real quick. Is it okay to ask how many people are you finding for this position? Why?
No, I don't think it is.
What does it matter?
There's assume there's 20.
Yeah, it really doesn't
so
matter.
Like,
that question is going to
it
gain
doesn't
you
even
nothing.
matter.
What can you do if you know the answer to that question? What are you going to do differently?
Yeah.
Nothing.
So assume that you're not the only person interviewing. Assume that they're interviewing 20. They got 3 recruiting firms working on it, plus their own ad. There are tons of people interviewing for any good tech job, and just assume you're not the only one. But that doesn't mean you can't win either.
Here you go. Joe gets it. I don't think it shows confidence in your approach. True. Go to the interview like it was made for you and you own it. Boom. There you go. Yep. That is it.
It doesn't matter how many people are interviewing. And so what we do as humans is we find reasons to self-sabotage when we think, oh, I can't interview there. Everyone's interviewing for that. I'm not even going to try. You have to go through the process of trying and getting better. We're not going to win the first interview, but we can win by the 5th one or the 6th one if we're about improving each and every time.
Yep. Okay, let's do some questions. Bernard's question says, can I show my GitHub as job portfolio?
Here's my thing. I think you should definitely have a GitHub. Here's the problem with showing GitHub. It's not compiled. So it's not a strong demo. It is source code, as we know, but you want to have a website or portfolio put together. Now, let's say that you're a desktop programmer or you're an embedded programmer. We got to find creative ways to demo that stuff to people through emulators or something like that. But just showing your GitHub, I don't think is the strongest way to do it. If that's all you got, that's all you got. I mean, but like build a website and show working compiled apps. Now, if you, like I said before, if you're showing a mobile app, maybe you can show an emulator on your desktop, or you've got to share a screen for a desktop app and show that. And so websites can easily be published and get it working. So, but it's not as strong.
Yeah, because I think this is a weird kind of like, I'm going to call it a cop-out, because it's kind of like, you're going for a job where you're trying to be, let's say that it is a web developer job, right? So you're going for a web dev job, but you don't have any websites published. Like, we've used this analogy before. It's like going to a studio and pitching a movie, but you've never made a movie before. Yeah. And they're like, you got anything to show? And you're like, no. Like,
right.
Christopher Nolan shows up with a demo movie. Like, you know what I mean?
I guarantee
other people show up with demo movies. Like,
they probably have pitch movies that they've sent.
I'm sure.
And this is my idea for Avengers 5.
Yes,
this is what I want to do.
You have to think of your stuff the same way. It's like you're going for the job in this thing. You have to show that you can do this thing, and it's right. You can easily do that, especially if you've got stuff in GitHub. Like, what do you have in GitHub? Like that you for some reason can't publish. Like, publish it.
I like it.
Because it's easy to publish.
I think it's part of it, but the portfolio is much stronger for sure.
Yep.
All right. Hope that helps, Bernard.
Okay, let's see. This is kind of, I think this was an early question, but I think we can kind of go over this a little bit. So, are most coding assessments same type of questions I can practice in Leet code?
Maybe.
I mean,
but they're not always the same. So, like, Leet code is targeting a very specific set of coding type questions. Definitely on the assessment type, and you'll see those kind of things. What I'd say is you can go there and practice all you want. What I promise you is they're going to ask you some of the other questions around your stack. as well. So you need to be able to do both of them. You're going to get one leak code style question probably on most interviews. Now, if you're going to Amazon or Google, it may be different, but a portfolio can trump these things, even if you're not good at them on demand. Now, if you're doing them overnight, hey man, overnight coding assessments, I love those. I feel like that's a home run. Like if, the ones that are in person, that's the hard ones. Yeah. I mean, when I see people complain about overnight ones, I'm like, dude, unless it's so much work you can't do, like we did have someone say write chess. I mean, like that was kind of crazy. Right. I mean, like, right. And I actually said that I think that's too much work, but like, but it was a super, super, super senior role as well. It wasn't a junior role. So don't get scared. So you can practice in LeetCode for sure. But in the US, I think we can make our portfolio trump those kind of things and still answer questions. But you can do that if you want. I would say turn them into apps and put them on your portfolio. That's what we do here at Coder Foundry.
There you go. So just to clarify this, Clara's saying, so by publish it, you mean like on Netlify?
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I could share my screen here, I would show you one. But like you could bring up superdogevents.coderfoundry, Kevin.
Yeah.
And so this would be an example of a coding challenge that's turned into an app. And so look at this. So we got a home page here, and then we've got a try it out button. Look at that. And so now it's just a simple array. It can filter some stuff, and then we also can add data. We can just click on add data there. And then so it works. It's a full-blown app, but the question is, can you average the values in an array? Well, yeah, I can do total, average, most, and least. So like I'm using array functions to do this. Yep. And on top of that, I can add to this object here. Now I built a code section in here. And so now I'm using Prism and I'm showing my code on the back end of this, how I did it. So this is all JavaScript, obviously, but you could do something similar. And then on top of that, guess what? You can click on the repo if you want to go look at the code. And now in my repo, notice here, if you go down to my, I've got all my stuff in the repo too as well. So I've got it laid out. So this is an example of a coding project that's also attached to my portfolio that I can show. And this is what we build at Coder Foundry, and in the self-paced course, we show you how to build all of these things. We think, dude, do I know how to average something in JavaScript? Well, let me show you Superdog events. Let me show you how this worked. And then you could take them right to the code from your portfolio. Even that, because we're using things like Prism to show code right in the website. We don't have to bring up VS Code at all.
Yeah. I mean, that website it's designed to win the interview.
It's what it's doing. And we built eight or nine of those. And so like any LeetCode thing that you can build, you can turn into an app like this. Because
imagine if you're in this interview and you're demoing this, and it's like, oh yeah, and you demo your app real quick and you show your thing, you're like, but you're getting to the root of whatever the question is. You have your code here ready to go on the same site too. It's like, oh yeah, I did that right here. Look, that's killer. Yeah, exactly. It's designed exactly to do this technique.
So that's what we mean. So build things like this, and and look, when you see Superdog events and you're out there and you're junior and you're like, dude, that is aspirational. Like I get it. Like it looks like no one would ever do that. I promise you at Coder Foundry, that's what we're building, and we make it simple. We're using a template that we use on each one of these projects. They're all the same. They have the same 5 pages on it. You just change out the home page a little bit with a different logo. You change out the app that you're building for, Superdog or Fizz Buzz or whatever you're doing, and then you change out the code section once you have the code written. So yeah, it takes a little effort, but we're not talking about days. Once you've built a couple of these, they're pretty easy to crank out. And then your portfolio just looks like a rock star. Anyway, hope that helps.
Definitely. Let's do this one real quick, just because it's a plug for this book again, which some of these ideas are in the book, but not in the same format. This open redirect and show technique itself isn't in the book. The ideas kind of are, but not in that format.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing is if you go look at YouTube, Austin, and then I've made a bunch of JavaScript videos about like, here's some project you can build. You can go look at superdogevents.coderfoundry.com and go look at that right now and build that one. That's one we have published out there. We haven't published them all. And the reason we don't publish them all is because we're also changing them quite a bit. So like, some of them, none of these ideas are magic though, Austin. Like I want you to understand, it's not 5 magic beans. And if I could put these 5 magic projects on it, I'm going to guarantee to get a job. That's true to some degree because we can talk about them, but you got to put in the effort and work. And so we're building a mortgage calculator. We have something we've called Super Dog events. There's a palindrome exercise. We do Fizz Buzz. There's a lot of them that we run through that we've labeled ourselves that are built around coding challenges. And you can go to dailycodeproblem.com. You can go to LeetCode to get these and just turn them into apps. That's what we do.
Yep.
Cool.
Here's one last thing to talk about. Here's my question. When you go on Glassdoor to check interviews, would you trust the negative experiences with negative comments?
So here's the thing, Jose. What I would say this, if you do not have a job and you're sitting there, I need a job, then I wouldn't listen to any of that Glassdoor at all. That's not gonna influence me not to interview at all. I need a job, I need a paycheck, I need to get paid. Now, if you're 5 to 10 years into this and you've got recruiters calling you every week and you get six offers a week, then you can be more picky. Yeah. The problem is, as we're trying to break in, we try to act like we're 10 years into this when we're not. And we want to behave like some of the 20-year veterans do because they have options and you don't. So it's just the way it is. So I wouldn't listen to any of that. Second, most people publish negative comments. Most people do not publish positive comments.
Yep.
The other thing is on negative experiences, you don't know the person that's writing it. And so you might go back and look at all of their reviews and they're like, man, they have a problem with the haircut. They have a problem with eating dinner. They have a problem with everything, it doesn't matter what they do.
No, it's true.
I leave in a fit of rage wherever I'm at, so like, that's the other problem with negative experiences. People like to post their negative stuff,
Yep, definitely. It's definitely more popular to post negative stuff than it is positive stuff. Yeah. And what you find on like those reviews are 5 stars or 1 stars if that's your scale, right? And you don't, when's the last time you published like a 3-star review for something? Anybody on something? It's like, it was all right. But you didn't bother, right? So it's like, so that ultimately like it's like you kind of have to throw out the top and the bottom anyway because it's all an opinion. Because how can something be? How can anything to somebody be a 5-star, but then the next person that comes in be a 1-star? It's all subjective, right? It's all like it's all your experience of the thing. It's like you look on Yelp at restaurants, and it's the same kind of thing. You'll see a place, and it's like you go to a new city to try and find a restaurant. Right? I do this all the time. I'm like, where are we going to go? You go to the place that has kind of a higher average, but then you'll read like 1-star reviews, and it'll be like, you'll read the review and you'll be like, the waitress was horrible to me. So it's like, oh, okay. But the next guy's like, greatest place I've ever eaten.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that waitress got fired, or she was having a bad day, or her dog just died. We don't know. I mean, so it's
all about
crazy.
your opinion of it.
Yeah. The other thing that Jose, that I want to recommend is one of my rules and thumbs in life is I just show up and also take almost every meeting, which means every meeting can lead to an opportunity. And if I'm looking at an interview, I'm taking all the interviews, especially if I want a new job or I'm trying to break in. I don't really care what it is. I figure I'm going to get there. I'm going to make it work somehow, some way. Or at the very minimum, if they beat me with a stick, if I can bear it for 6 months, I can get a paycheck until I get enough experience to leave. So like there's a lot of things that that you can bear and put up with so that you can get a paycheck, you can make money, get experience, and move on to that next and better place. So I try to get the first interview, take the first offer, take that job, put a year on your resume, and then this world really does open up. It becomes a lot easier to find the second role than it is to find the first one.
Definitely. The more experience you have in this and the longer you've been in it, the more opportunities open up.
Yeah.
I think I saw Tech Rally post about this. So Alex posted about this on Twitter a couple of days ago, talking about the number of recruiters he's got hitting him up now. Soon, he's working at Amazon now too, so it's like he's a bunch of years into this, and he's now got an Amazon job.
5 or 6 years now.
They're like knocking the doors down. Like,
right. And here's what I would do. What I always caution people there in the 5-6 years. I'm not saying Alex is doing this, but build relationships with these recruiters, because when you need them, you need them. So don't get mad at what they're trying to do. Look at all these opportunities. You don't have to take every one. You can politely say, I'm not interested in that one, but thanks for reaching out. Right now, I'm good. But hit me up in next year or something like that.
Right.
But the last thing you want to do is like burn every bridge with every recruiter. Then something happens at your company and suddenly you're out of work. And now you're calling them back and yo, Amy, what's up? You know, like, you remember me from last year? Yeah, you yelled at me last time.
She's like, oh yeah, I remember you.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do this real quick. I know we're a little bit over, but I love this.
Okay.
So Hin says, I have an offer from a company now, but I'm in the process of interviewing for another. Do you think it's unethical of me to continue this interview process if I intend to reject the offer eventually?
So here's what I've seen people do. And if you have an offer and you're trying to break in, I would take it. And I would not interview for the other one unless I'm like way down in the process. So typically when you get an offer, you got to answer it. So you can't delay for 2 weeks while you go through the interview process with someone else. And you can just politely let them know that, hey, you know what? I've got an interview. I've already got an offer on the table, and I'm just going to bow out of the process. It's a waste of your time.
Well, you're also saying you're eventually going to reject it anyway. You kind of already decided that, right?
So just go to work at the other company, and then that way you don't burn a bridge with the recruiter and potentially with the company, because you may want to go back there at that company one day. You never know. Or the hiring manager that could go to another company, and they'll remember that you had no intention of taking a job and you wasted his time. You're saving yourself time, but you're also saving them time. If they know you're not going to take the job, they don't want to go through the process of interviewing you. So like, if you already got an offer, I always say this: take the first offer, especially early on in your career, and keep and then move on. Don't get cocky, kid. That's what I always say. Luke Skywalker, he shoots down the first TIE fighter, and he's ready. He's beat the Empire at this point. And Han Solo says, "Don't get cocky." So we get offers coming in, and we kind of overreact to that process and figure we can be really choosy, and we don't know if that second one's going to come in, and we risk offending the first offer, and then we lose them both, which I've seen people do.
Yep. And then
you never take the first offer, and you never break in. So
by the way, take the first offer is in the book.
Yes, it is in the book.
It is literally, it's a chapter. So it's on page 131. It's called Take the First Job. So chapter 8 in the book. So you can check that out. Okay, cool.
All right, cool.
We're a little bit over, so let's wrap up. I think we're
hey, give us a sub if you like us, and just give us a like here on the video. We like to do that, and we'll make more content, and especially maybe leave a comment after the video goes on live to tell us that you liked this kind of educational content instead of in the live format, and we'll keep doing it. And so hopefully this helped out for a lot of people there.
Likes and comments help us. We super appreciate it. It pushes it out in the algorithm, and it helps that channel. Yeah. So.
And if you couldn't comment today, just remember that you have to be a sub to comment now because of bots and things.
You do, yeah. When we're live, you do, yeah. You do have to be a sub for at least 5 minutes. So that's kind of the YouTube thing that we have to end on now.
All right. Well, good luck, and we'll see you Tuesday. Good luck and keep coding, guys. See you later.
See you later.